Hey, welcome to the podcast, Ashley.
Oh, thank you so much, Asher. This has been a delight just to have a little pre-meet with you and to be back in the same screen with you. So I'm excited.
Awesome. And for anyone who doesn't know you, who do you say you are?
Oh, this is a good question. I used to wrestle with this because I think a lot of times that we equate the who we are to the actual title and what we do.
Mm,
So I'll say first and foremost, I will say for me, I am a daughter of the Most High King, believer in Christ, and you know, I would say that really what my bread and butter and the things that I really love is I really love people service, service to mankind. I love to organize. I love to help. I love to be able to build things from scratch.
mm,
I think there's something beautiful about putting together something that has been unprecedented,
mm.
something that you've never done before. So I do a lot of that, whether it's career, whether it's business, whether it is, work in my community on boards and different things like that within my church. So yeah.
Awesome. I guess you sound like my type of person.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Awesome. And tell me, like, where do you how'd you get started? Like, where'd you grow up? Like, what was your upbringing
Sure.
like?
Oh, well, my upbringing, it was really cool. Like I am from Northern Virginia, right outside of DC.
Hmm.
And so I was raised by my mother and also my grandmother.
Hmm.
And so my life was really cool because I got to, I went to great schools. I actually went to Catholic school for a good portion of my elementary, let's see, middle school to 12th grade.
Hmm.
But yeah, I was always maybe the type of kid that um I really loved being social, but I also had to always balance that with taking my studies seriously. So while it wasn't that I didn't have an interest in academics,
Hmm.
I just always noticed the pattern of like, I would just be talking, you know what I'm saying? And so, but I also knew too the importance of what was instilled in me, which was academics and making sure that you are on top of your schoolwork. A funny story is that many people will ask me, well, Ashley, have you always been this way in terms of like organizing and like very like process driven and oriented?
Hmm.
And I would say yes, because I always go back to the middle school days of what would happen if I would bring a grade home that wasn't the best, and I
Hmm.
would get the question, hey, did you study? What was your process?
Hmm.
And sometimes there would be no process, right? And so as soon as I started to learn, my process had to be put a set time, make sure you have a cadence for when you're studying, a schedule in place. When that was happening, that would be the things that would point me into the direction of the structure gives me the freedom to
Hmm.
be able to be able to finish my coursework and academics and all the testing and do very well, and therefore you get the perks, right? You get to get the, what is it, the toys, the shopping, you get to go
Hmm.
places, all the things. So soon, and very soon for me, even when I was in college, same thing, right? It was making sure that there was structure.
Hmm.
And so that was a huge part. I mean, the first 2 years, I would say they were okay academically, but I was so excited to just be a part of just meeting people, hanging out, and
Hmm.
and just so that the audience knows, I'm a low risk taker. So I'm not someone who was like, I never really went off campus or anything
Gotcha.
like that. I would hang out late,
Hmm. You're
go
not
to
trying to
just
be
some
the life of the party.
I it was this is funny. It was a difference between balancing the life of the party, but
Mhm.
also like not being stranded places. Like I
Huh,
wasn't about these horror
right.
stories that would hear about like they go off campus and then they're here and then it's like we got back at 6 a.m. I just couldn't do it. But I would
Mhm.
be with my friends on campus, hanging out and whatnot. But also at the same time, we would also be the same groups of people that would be in the library as well,
Mm.
and so that was something that was really really um good
Yeah.
at the same time. So but then you started to really hear, well, let me back that up.
Mhm.
I really started to think through end of sophomore year. All right, Ash, you got 2 years left. What does this all look like?
Mm.
And so that's when I really just had to start to talk to God about some things. And I had to really start to say, all right, girl, you need to make sure in terms of, the GPA that you had and you want to go to law school and all these things. What does that look like? How are you going to change? And I just truly believe this is like one of my philosophies is that if you want something different, you have to do something different. So
Right.
what does that difference mean? Like, and it's going to mean something for different people. It's your habits, your systems, and your behaviors. So those are the fundamental things.
Gotcha. It's funny when you talk about habit systems and behaviors, it sounds like it's already been ingrained in you. And just how you
Mhm.
describe the dialogue between you and your mom or you and your dad, it's like I've never heard a parent ask like, "What was your process like?" It's always like, "Did you like what's this grade? Why did you get this or why didn't you get what you were supposed to
That's
get?"
right.
But the way that you
Yeah.
described it, it makes it seem more um it's more digestible.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because the question my mom would ask would be like, did you do your best? Right. And what does that look like? And so,
Mm,
and I was truthful, because I just was never the type of person to be like, oh, well, of course I did my best. No, I didn't do my
mm.
best because I didn't prepare. I didn't have a process in place. Yeah.
Gotcha. That's encouraging. It's like you're encouraged to tell the truth at the same time. You're also encouraged to strive for your best. And
That's right.
actually, like there's a dialogue there. It's not just a that you'll do what you're told type thing. It's like,
That's
okay,
right.
like because when it always goes one way, it's like you can't really be surprised at the outcomes because it's the same story time and time again where we see it play out, and some people maybe that don't pay attention to the typical stories are like, how could this have happened? And it's like, I guess you hadn't been paying attention. Like, welcome to the world. Like, these are the things that happen. If you do this, you get this. And that's how it goes. There's no secret, no if, ands about it.
That's right. That's right. And I think it was also a thing about, my mother really just instilling upon me of like, you have to be prepared for the world,
Mm,
right? I'm not always going to be, right up there, whether it was like picking up from school or whatever, where have you. You have to have skill sets. You have to be responsible. You have to be accountable.
mm,
And so I think that was one of the tenets or the core philosophies that was just ingrained on me just very early age. What does it mean to be accountable? How you are accountable for your work, you're accountable for what you produce, and so in your own young mind, you're not necessarily thinking about being out and about,
mhm,
like, and having a career or doing whatever. You're just thinking about like, all right, I just have to go pass this class.
mm.
That's it.
Yeah. So how did that change when you kind of looked at yourself sophomore year and you're like, okay, what direction am I going to go? Like, what
Yeah.
in which way did you end up going?
Well, I ended up really drilling down to making sure that again, the systems, habits, and behaviors. So really looking at what I was doing in terms of my major. I
Mm,
went to the College of William and Mary, and I was in Williamsburg, Virginia, and so I had a BA in government,
mm,
and so the big dream was go to college, go to law school.
mm,
And what that looked like was I had to start to balance out my leadership activities, and also the study time and the schedules and all that type of stuff. So that was really a wake up call, just to really sort of say, all right, you need to make sure that even though you want to go to the library,
Mhm.
and you can't go to the first floor. Why can't you go to the first floor? Because that is where all the buzz is. That's where you're going to see all the people. I'm
Mhm.
going to be that person. I'm still to this day, still very extroverted. So I'm going to go talk to 5 people before I actually go sit down.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like and so it's knowing that maybe you go to another library, maybe you go to another place that
Mhm.
you go to study and have quiet time. So
Mhm.
you have to, it's decisions. You're just
Yeah.
having to make better decisions. And so because of that,
Mhm.
I didn't get into law school. And so what was interesting about that was the aspect of preparation. Folks that go into law school, certain GPA,
Mhm.
certain types of grades and things. And so that was a wake up call about how you need to really be prepared for the success that you want to see.
Mhm.
And so that was a huge theme. So while I didn't get into law school, didn't really have great LSATs, I had to think, well, what else? What's going to be the plan? You got to
Mhm.
kind of start thinking through that. And so I was like, well, I really do want to understand policy, government, all of those things like better. I want to understand laws are being made.
Mhm.
How does that happen? And how does it help everyday people like you and me? Like
Mhm.
what does that look like? So I always had an interest in that,
Yeah.
but I took a different route. So I went in right after grad school. I went up into Emily's List, and
Mhm.
that is I think it's like a liberal political, yeah, it's a political organization
Mhm.
where they go and they deploy young people to be community organizers. That was a very popular, I know, term and or profession due to former President Barack Obama. So a lot of people were out like, I'm a community organizer, So so I was a field organizer, and I was up in Pennsylvania near
Mhm.
I was in what was it, the Nittany Lions? There's probably some UPenn people, but it
Yeah.
was in that territory. It was a lot of like UPenn people out there,
Gotcha.
and that's where I was, and I spent maybe like 4 months out there,
Mm.
understanding campaign life,
Yeah.
and what does it mean to actually organize people to go vote for somebody.
Mhm.
Like I had never conceptualize what it is. I mean, we would see, and you probably have people knocking on the door or mailing something in, and understanding that aspect of like why people want to run for office,
Mhm.
you know, having a campaign team, convincing somebody that you're the person to elect. That was like a mind blowing experience, a mind
Mhm.
blowing experience. Yeah.
That's pretty neat. So I guess maybe I missed it, but when you did your undergraduate, and then I guess
Yes.
you went to grad school still in the hopes of saying, okay, I'm going to go pursue law, or it was strictly
It
government.
was it was public policy. So that was
Gotcha.
probably, let's see, that's 08, 09, and then 2012 to 2014. So I had about 3 to 4 years of like work experience out in the real world, building my
Gotcha.
career. Yeah, so I worked for a homelessness nonprofit. And so
Mhm.
it was like an advocacy organization. I was an
Mm.
executive assistant, but I learned a ton about organizations that are issue based
Mm.
and coalition building and stakeholder engagement, and what that actually means when you're looking to like lobby and
Mm.
all these different things. And then I did a whole bunch of stints for like government contracting. So I've had, up until that point before deciding to say, you know what, I really, really love this aspect of the policy work. I want to go deeper into that study. I
Mhm.
already started to build my experience of understanding the people,
Mm.
understanding the policy, understanding the process.
Mm.
And I think that gave me a really good perspective on what's not in the news and
Right.
what is actually behind the scenes. And it's like a whole treasure chest
Yeah.
of things.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's interesting because it's
Mm,
like for people that are interested in like policies and procedures, you don't meet many people like that. And I guess that was interesting to me because going the engineering track, we're people that like to tinker and different things like
Yes.
that. And I think it when like we both met through Brief University and being introduced to
Hmm.
like the disc assessment and being able to see the breakdown of that where you have your introverts, extroverts, but then
Yes.
where you kind of overlap, you have the D and C's, they're kind of like problems based, and then the I and the S's are people based.
Yes.
But it's like knowing that people can have all those aspects within themselves and then know what to tap into to connect with other people. I
That's
found
right.
it I find it pretty neat that you're someone that's both extroverted, but like most people that you see get into like politics, government, things like that. They seem to be like the charismatic person that like
Right.
they'll what's the word saying? Like they'll sell ice to an Eskimo or like they'll
Absolutely.
they'll be able to like rattle things off that are like, oh wow, I didn't think about that. But then like you get 20 minutes, 30 minutes into the conversation, like, what did they say? And then it's like you don't think about it until like days. But it's like to meet you and to speak to someone that actually looks at, okay, here's what happens after the talking stops. Like here's what happens that even
That's
gets
right.
someone to a stage or that gets someone to understand what goes behind the veil, so to speak, is pretty neat.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool. And I think what I had started to have a deeper appreciation was understanding when I started getting into actual government agencies. So I was at, let's see, Department of Commerce, I was at Homeland Security, and it was cool. And I also did a little stint on the Hill. Again, this aspect of understanding the hierarchy of like structure and like policies that are in place, and then what does it mean to implement. It's a whole type of, it's a different way of thinking that I
Mhm,
think was elevated, and also it stretched my view of how people would go about solving problems. And
mhm,
so I think that, I'll say to anyone who, and I used to hear a lot of people say, especially when it was like the '08 era and, presidential years and things like that, or local races and whatnot, you
mhm,
hear people say, like, I'm not into politics, I'm not into policy. And I said, well,
mhm,
you know, actually like the who like the company and the days in which your trash gets picked up, that's politics, that's policy.
right, right,
Whether no, and so people start to think about it, they're like, huh, they're like, what do you mean? I said, no, I that's local government. That
right,
is an aspect of your supervisor or whatever the council, depending on your township and your structure, they're the ones that make in the contracting for the
mhm,
waste management company to come in,
yeah,
and so all of that is, it's not just CNN or being on a stage and who has a debate,
mhm,
it's everywhere. And so I think the posture that I've always tried to take was, I never went into it with like, like, here's a policy I want to write, and like, I've always went into it as like, oh, this is what I would love to like be a part of. But I had to start challenging myself, not at that at the surface level, and
mhm,
say, I don't really understand even at the local level, what does that mean? So I started joining like the Urban League and NAACP, and I wanted to understand locally what this meant. And so so I was on the board for the Northern Virginia Urban League, and most recently I'm with the Thursday Network.
mhm,
And so a lot of what's cool about being a part of those types of organizations, and I encourage people to always to go to like your local meetings and things like that, like town, those town councils and whatnot,
mhm,
town hall meetings, is because this is where you can see policy making in action. And so a lot of times when, whether it's something on the news, a tragedy and whatnot, there's always a little uptick of like, how do we get involved? And that
mhm,
was this before I was even had any type of awareness. I would just say to myself, like, well, Ashley, what does it actually mean to be involved?
Right.
Like, does be involved mean that you are what? Does it mean that you go and that you go out to campaign? Do you protest? Do you write letters? Like, and so I had someone that was a part of one of my organizations that actually walked me through what does it mean to be a part of change, because it's
Mhm.
a cliche term. I want to be a part of change.
Right.
Well,
Right.
I was asking that question. I was like, well, how does Ashley want to be a part of change?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? And so I would say to anyone out there that is that whatever you want to pursue, whether that's and we'll probably get into like how I got into business and all that
Yeah. Yeah.
later, but like anything that you do, always challenge the why behind it.
Mhm.
And always think to yourself like, what what is it that I want to do or even not want to do? You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? Because I think there's an aspect of like, I have to be like X. I have to
Mhm.
be like this person. I have to approach it this way. When I think what we really need to do is do some things like, for me, I had to start reading. I had to start reading about my own history.
Right.
Like, what's not in the textbooks, right? So I think you have to not be so I don't know what the right word is, but you know, basically what I'm getting at is that challenge yourself to understand, not just for understanding's sake, but so
Yeah.
that you have the knowledge so that you can be able to take the right action. So
Yeah. That makes sense. I guess for me, it seems like politics has got it gets it seems like it gets convoluted at times because it's hard to get into something where people have their own vested interests and they say that they care about other people at large, but it's like if they're really questioned and pressed, it's like, yeah, it's convenient when it's works to your favor. Like people have this joke about the HOA, homeowners associations, where it's like you always have somebody that just wants power or wants to be in charge of
yes,
something, but then they'll start making up rules and rules and rules, and it's like we don't need 1,000 rules. We need people to treat other people like people. And it's like I think that gets forgotten. And maybe you can help me understand what's something that's missed or misunderstood through the things that you've learned about creating policies or actually being involved where you're at versus just like reading headlines, being there for the big show, but then never showing up to clean up after a big event or actually being present or intentional and actually forming relationships with people and actually know who people are talking to instead of like there's a lot of people that talk over people's heads, and
sure.
it's like if I can look you in your eyes and have a conversation with you, I think it's pretty straightforward, and everybody at that point seems human. There's like, oh, it's not this monster that was painted over here, but it's like, well, we need an enemy and we need a devil to like chase out, cast out, and things like that. And it's like, look in the mirror. It's not that hard to find the devil. Like, I don't
That's
know if
right.
that's like off putting, but like, what's something that you think people miss or dismiss when it comes to what you're passionate about?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think what we have to I think realize is that there's always more to the story. There's it's and that there is, for the candidate or the person that's in office, there are there's motive to look at. There's also um people behind the person. And so I think a lot of times there is an aspect of like, you know, why can't X change? And, why is this happening? And, we forget, because, or we may not forget really, but, we've had a whole 100+ years of systemic, things that go on, structures and policies and things that have persisted over time. So to change something fundamentally would be to disrupt, right?
Mhm.
And so, I think that a couple of things I think happens is that there are very much well-intentioned people that run for office. There also are very and also well-intentioned people that are hired, that are in government officials, local officials, and whatnot. And so And then there's also at the same time, I think we've also seen it, bad actors and whatnot.
Mhm.
But I think that a few things for us to think about is, and I'm always about thinking critically and strategically about everything, even
Mhm.
if something is looked upon as like this is like a great policy. I'm
Yeah.
always looking at who does it affect. I'm looking at following the money,
Yeah.
because the money always tells the story. The money
Right.
always, and then I also look at the effects.
Mhm.
I always look at, well, what is the particular change that is going to happen? And
Right.
so I think that when it comes to the work that goes on the, whether it's a local, state, or even at the federal level, those are probably the top three things that I think all of us should examine. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think so. Yeah.
Gotcha. And I guess why would you say change is important? Because it's nice to have things be the same, be
Yeah.
predictable.
Yeah.
Like why even like consider, okay, some I'm gonna have to expect something different tomorrow. Like, let's just keep it all the same.
Well, I think that I think there's a balance between, it's hard because everyone has their own vantage point of what should be changed, what shouldn't be changed, the direction, so many things that just are all sort of over the place. But, you know, I think that I think to your question, when you think about the change, and like I said, in the rooms that I've been in, I think it's a matter of like, what is the intent behind it? So
Right.
is it supposed to um, further something? Is it supposed to fix something? Is it supposed to right a wrong? You know what I'm saying? Is it has there been like barriers that are in place? So I even think about, when I was working at a homelessness nonprofit agency.
Mhm.
And what was really interesting about that is, there was an aspect of like the McKinney-Vento Act, and, making sure that there were allocated funding in place.
Mhm.
And there was also like advocacy to even increase that funding, right? Sometimes it
Mhm.
would just be like a little small amount,
Yeah.
and so, for example, so I use that as an example to say, well, because many, I read these posts, and, people are like, oh, well, there's so many people who are experiencing homelessness. Like, like, what do we do about it? How do we, and so
Right.
it's really like a matter of like, let's look at the ecosystem. Let's look at
Right. The
social,
root
let's look at
causes.
it. Yeah, let's look at the root causes. Let's look at let's look at our social services. Let's look at where money is being spent. And
Yeah.
so being able to increase services at, social services level, healthcare, money for increased funds from the McKinney-Vento Act, all of these things help the cities be able
Mhm.
to, build out homes, and, build out, and have, opportunities for, jobs and employment, and things like that. So,
Yeah.
I think being able to dissect what the change is and the effects of it, and then who's involved in it, and then
Mhm.
all of those things, I think, again, goes back to the fact of challenging what is it that you want to change and why.
Right.
um so
I almost feel like I'm interviewing you for office. I'm like, why should I vote for you?
that's too funny. Exactly.
But what's interesting is that, like, do you think people consider enough that their ideas, their notions, their good intentions may be wrong? Like, do people ever give enough credence to that? Like everything that I've come up with might not be justified. Like, how do you
It's
think
possible.
people come across that? Because I feel like a lot of times the problem with being just good intention but not being systematic or approached with enough critique is that we don't give ourselves enough pushback, or the moment that we get pushback it becomes a thing of, oh, they don't like me, they hate me, everything's against me. It's like, no, it might not be that. It might be there's a legitimate considerations that haven't been made, and instead of taking our ball and going home, it's that, huh, is this something that we can address? Or maybe I guess some people might say it's another distraction, it's something to get us off the mark,
Mm,
so to speak. But it's like I think sometimes like whenever I think politics and the thing that like kind of divides me on it, but then it brings me back to it once it starts affecting me and I'm like, okay, locally, this seems problematic. Can I address it or can I not address it? And if I can address it, like, am I just going to avoid it and pretend like it's not there? Am I going to cover my eyes, drive down a different street, move to another town, move to a different place? And it's like, what do you think?
yeah, I think I think it's a good question. I think a few things that come to mind is that, there's always whether it's an idea, whether it's a program, an initiative that's looking to be launched and whatnot, there's more people and players and external and internal factors.
Mhm,
So what might start off as a great idea and may not always land in the way it's intended, and that's because there could be a few things. There could be things where folks are brokering deals. There's could
mhm,
be funding types of things. um there's differences in terms of like, what's the original intent versus like, what is the true intent of the actual overall goal. So even I would even say for even a local school district, right, or a county school district, there may be some things where there may be some programs and initiatives that are being launched where someone has the idea and said, "Hey, I think this is where we, need to go," or like, this is the direction because this is what the superintendent wants,
mhm,
but it takes a little bit of time to massage the actual idea, the
mhm,
actual structure, who's involved, having the money, piece to it, right? And so, and then also being able to socialize it out to whether it's the public, parents, the
mhm,
community, right? And so that's where things get interesting, is that once you kind of you've crafted this thing, you're ready to present it,
mhm,
it could be that, well, I why are you doing this? Like,
mhm.
you know what I'm saying? Or it may be that the fact to be like, oh wow,
Mhm,
finally you're doing this. And so I think there's just there's quite a few um there's quite a few different factors when it comes to, again, going back to my one of my intro statements, is actually this aspect of building something that's unprecedented or
mhm.
something new or from scratch. uh,
Right.
you don't really, unless you are, well, I'm not saying unless, what's necessary is
Mhm,
that the coalition building, making sure that you're bringing the right people to the table,
yeah.
that can make sure that you have the different perspectives and the ideas. Maybe not everyone, but
Mhm,
the core people,
yeah.
right? That the core groups of people that need to have your ear. So yeah.
Gotcha. How much time do you think is spent maintaining something once it's started? Because I think it's attractive to have the new shiny thing, but then once it's up and going, like a lot of things seem to fail because nobody seems to like be bothered when it's like, okay, like I started this new thing and like some people are maybe famous for like I started this and I started this and I started this, but it's like when you talk about maybe something like a charity or something like an initiative, whatever it may be, it's like again kind of going back to the good intentions, but it's like looking at the long-term effect, like what is this actually doing a year, 2 years down the line, and like how have you seen that be played out, like either positively or negatively?
Well, that's a good question, and I'll switch to some examples of like in business, and what I've seen is that, you know when a lot of people come to me for, well, a couple questions like, what app should I use to stay organized?
Mhm,
How do I set up a particular project or program? Um, what's the best way to do X, Y, and Z? A lot of project and program work is really centered around the the infrastructure.
mhm,
Okay, it's really like what's your process going to be? And really, when I mean process, and I'll even interchange it with workflow,
Mhm.
I'll define it as just like, what are these? What are the steps? What
Right,
are the
right.
phases? Okay. And so I think where there's always an excitement about, I'm going to launch X, or I'm going to build this. And
Right.
it always goes back down to, I think, the fundamentals of goals, of also your why. And many people are probably thinking like, all right, that's so cliche, right?
Mhm.
Go back to your why. But it's true. What's at the core of who you are, at the core of what you're doing for business, or or whatever industry that you're in. I think it's so important that you, despite the changing of the wind of whatever it is of a trend or society, that if this is something that you really believe in,
Mhm.
then you really have to stick to your guns, and really stick to your particular values and what you want to build, to say, all right, well, I'm gonna do this. This is
Mhm.
why I often will teach and train and speak a lot on, what does it mean to have a vision? What
Mhm.
does it mean to really have a vision for what you want to do? And that's everything from like the objective to like what's the actual thing that you're looking to launch. What's the outcomes? Who is this for?
Mhm.
How much money do you need? All of these types of things that I think are so core, that sometimes gets overlooked. There's an aspect of like, launch this and launch that. And I believe that if you want to quick start something because you feel the need and urgency, I think
Mhm.
everyone should have have the breadth and depth. They should feel the autonomy, rather, that's a better word, to go
Yeah.
ahead and do that. However, I do believe that, there's an aspect of taking your time for the things that you are looking to build and launch, right? And
Mhm.
I think that's so important. So I think that while the shiny new thing, like for instance, there was an era of having a course.
Mhm. Right.
You have a course, have a course, have a course. Shout out to the course director, Jose Bennett. He, I he would always, and he's still building courses. I remember at the time that everyone had a course, I was like, I don't really think that's even me.
Mhm.
Like, I don't even think that even fits me. I had a lot of questions about, some of it was like, would someone even buy a course for me? But then also it was like, what would the course actually do for someone?
Right.
And I couldn't connect the dots
Right.
on that until just about maybe like a month ago. Through our kind of our pre-chat, talking about the world of audio
Mhm.
and understanding how people were using it, I was like, okay, someone said audio course. I started to be intrigued about that a few months back. I said, this is something so interesting about being able to record some lessons or some things.
Yeah.
And then that's what I did. And I said, okay, this is going to be really great. This is a good item. This is something that's evergreen that can help anyone that's coming into the PM space, whether you're called a project manager or not.
Mhm.
These are some really fundamental 3 lessons. Only takes about an hour to finish. Easy.
Gotcha.
And so I think back to your original question, I think that this aspect of like, let's follow the shiny thing. I think you got to be careful about how many trends is it going to take, for
Yeah.
you to really kind of feel as if, all right, like, I'm always on top of my game. I think the same thing goes with the beloved golden child of AI. I
Mhm.
think it's the same thing. I think
Right.
you have
Right.
to really, I think you have to understand. And for me, it's not about not wanting to partake in AI, but I
Mhm.
had to even get down again, challenging what you know.
Yeah.
Can Ashley Shuler, can you even define artificial intelligence? You know what I'm saying? At its core definition.
Mhm.
So as I started to see about, why we had this boom of I went into the Slack group. It was called Black Code Collective.
Mhm.
One thing that I will do is, I always like to be a part of other types of communities to, again, trends. patterns, systems, behaviors. How
Mhm.
do they work? What are they doing over there? So these are a whole bunch of like Black coders, and they start talking about AI. And I think I asked the question, or someone asked a question about like, well, I want to read about it.
Mhm.
And they put this book, it was called Scary Smart by Mo Gawat, ex-Googler. I'm still going through that book, partially because I'm a slow reader, but I'm
Mhm.
still going through that book. And I loved it. I love this book because it really puts down the fundamentals of artificial intelligence. The
Mhm.
fact of the matter is that had AI. We've had it for almost 60, 50, 70 years,
Yeah.
and it brings you through the whole process. And so for me, that helped me better understand where AI is, understanding the fundamentals of, again, bad actors, good actors, motivations,
Yeah.
how to use it.
Right.
And then also, too, from a product standpoint, because I've been studying kind of agile and product management on my own. Sherelle Dorsey in The Plug had
Mhm.
100 Black tech startups. So
Mhm.
I did for my live streams that I do every Monday at 8. I took about 15 to 20 minutes to go through 5 per episode. And I would find out about all of these organizations that would create products that would use AI for good. And
Mhm.
I said, that right there, I can get behind. Um,
When you say use AI for good, what does that mean?
AI for social good, solving a problem. Because really, at the core, some of my own core values is that I'm when it comes to any of the work that I do, whether it's working in the policy and government space, whether it is actually working in the community, in business, I'm always very much interested in like social impact work. I'm interested in how does a program or project or initiative that I'm helping somebody build benefit somebody to go and either improve either an existing process or improve the way that they're thinking.
Right.
And so for me, if I can see that,
Mhm.
I can see better about how I can connect to this rise of, and I can't even say the rise, I would just say this is that we're in an era of just the booming of this particular how to use AI. Because again, it's been out for a
Right.
long
Right.
minute. So
Gotcha.
for me, I connected better for people that were using AI for, for like healthcare and like, or, how to go about. And I was like, okay, I was
Mhm.
like understanding how to use it. And so, yeah. So,
Gotcha. I guess kind of maybe keeping on the business hat and bringing yourself into it, like, and kind of pivoting back to the policy, government, politics, things like that to uncover some things maybe because for me it's like sometimes with language I get lost in the fog, so to speak, or I get lost in the
absolutely.
vagueness. That's why I try to ask a lot of questions, not to
It's good.
not to interrogate, but
No.
sometimes I do try and interrogate the space and not like the person. That way I can kind of get an idea of like, okay, I'm hearing this, but then I'm
Yeah.
hearing this, but then I'm like,
Yeah.
where exactly am I? But um in creating things that are new and making something fresh or learning something or getting involved in different organizations and different groups, like how do you inform yourself in like your role? Like
Yeah.
how do you measure like, okay, someone says they want to make an organization to save the puppies. And it's like, oh, what could be wrong with saving the puppies? But it's like, okay, like 5 years down the line, this turns out that they're having a front to save the puppies while they were like smuggling drugs and doing something else. But it's
Oh,
like because we were paying attention to this, like nobody who's gonna pay attention to this. I'm not trying to get you in trouble, not trying to start a conspiracy or anything like
right.
that.
Right.
But it's like certain things have kind of like played out in more ways than one. And it's not surprising to me, but it's it's weird to me where someone can champion one thing, but then never criticize their own thing to be like, okay, these may be problems and these are how I can either address them or I can not pretend that the problems aren't there. Because I think what has me questioning things, whether they be in business, politics, religion, or anything under the sun, like if something has my attention or if I walk across something, it's like I look at it like, okay, is this for me? Is it not? Should I pay attention to it? Should I move on? Like, I only have so much time in the day. But one thing that I've been trying to do in mirror work is like learning to acknowledge myself and also learning to look at the things that I can get better at. But again, it's not baffling to me, but it just reinforms me over and over that people are people, and that when someone is championing a cause, they almost present it as this is perfect and I've got the solution and I've got the thing. And it's like nobody has that. And it's the moment that it gets pushback, it's like, oh no, those are haters. Like, of course, people say some wild things online. Like, I've read some comment section and I'm like, this is more confirmation of why you don't jump in the comments, because it's like somebody will come out and they'll just say what's
Right.
on their chest, or they'll just be like,
Right.
they just needed to get something out. But it's like people say things that are completely unrelated to what's actually present. If it's a video on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, whatever it is that you use. But like, how do you strike the balance of for yourself, like knowing what's for you, what's informing you, and
Mhm.
maybe what's like taking you off track from where you're trying to go?
That's super powerful question. And I think, and I'll say this phrase and then I'll expand upon it. Uh, I would say number one is I rely on the Holy Spirit. So I rely, is John 14:16. And so I rely on that for all the things.
Mm.
And so what I came to this conclusion was that, and I'm reading the finishing of this book by Tony Evans on kingdom
Mhm.
stewardship, and really from my vantage point, I don't own anything. Yes, business owner wise, even car wise, right? There's
Mhm.
things, our computer, I own things, right?
Mhm.
But really, because God has created everything, and I'm really a manager of what he's given me. And so I had to come to that realization through the pandemic, and really in my own sort of self-discovery of who I was in Christ. And then that really helped me with understanding where I need to be,
Mhm.
what I need to do, and then how I need to do it. And so what that does is that just drowns out all the noise. I was with my other talking with my other life group, and we're doing a podcast together where seven of us were figuring out all the things, right?
Oh wow.
Logistics people. Similar to the view, but it's like we won't be like seven of us all the time. So it's
Mm.
fun, it's challenging,
Yeah.
rapidly challenging, but it's good. But one of the things we said on a live stream that we did over earlier this summer is one of the things I said is that we have to take into account that we have to take information and turn that into action.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times, and this happened to myself because I'm speaking from experience, information overload. We're just fed, we're just fed, we're just fed.
Right.
But it's like, do you even need to consume that? Why are you consuming that content? How is that actually going to help you to make the next best decision? So even to
Mhm.
your point of like being a part of different Slack groups, I want to also make sure to put a little asterisk by that. I'm not someone who is in there, for 4 hours a day in each of these groups,
Mhm.
but what it's doing, again, it's me being able to see systems, behaviors, and habits, because
Mhm.
it's not an aspect of like, oh, I've learned everything that I've known because I like have certifications and blah, 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 blah. But it's like, okay, how can I challenge myself in understanding how individuals are working? For instance, in this event planning space, I'm in a great Blacks in Events group.
Mhm.
And they are just 100 plus, I think it's like 200 plus event planners. I make it a point, not all the time, but I
Mhm.
say, hey, I'm not an event planner, but I've done like, you know, meetings and corporate meetings or whatever the case is. These people are full on professionals, but I love to see the fact that project management is baked inside of event planning. So
Yeah.
I love to see designers, folks that are graphic artists, people that work in that space. I love to see how they work. So
Right.
I'm contributing in that way. So I think, to your point of like, this aspect of like, how do you govern yourself accordingly, right?
Mhm.
It's really, it's getting and understanding, getting clarity
Mhm.
about what it is that I need to focus on. I said, okay, Lord, all right, for this particular season, what is it, even for business, career, whatever, where is it, should my focus be? And that has been a game changer for me because operating in my own strength, I was just tired, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And then I also wouldn't make the right decisions.
Yeah.
I was just like, I think, and again, there were some decisions that sure they worked out, but I may have questioned now the timing of it, or like, did it actually get me where I exactly needed to be? And
Mhm.
so I think that, for anyone that's out there listening, it's you really got to get a handle on understanding that, your gifts, your talents, and where you are right now, honestly, those directives in your plans, they do come from God, and they do come from, a place where you have purpose. But again, Asher's purpose and then mine are going to be totally different. So the way in which we may collaborate in the future, it's not a aspect of the competition thing. It's an
Mhm.
aspect of like, how is there a synergy or not? But even
Mhm.
if there is a synergy, okay, let's explore and how we find that. I'll go on this little tangent on this aspect of collaborations, and again, this aspect of where you need to be. I
Mhm.
think that there is beauty in really finding commonality, or an aspect of like, oh, I need to like be here or be there or be in the room. And I think you should go to the conferences and go and get the courses and the books and the things that and collaborate with the people that are really going to help to elevate where that you're looking to go. But
Right.
I also think too, something that I just had to really figure out is that I cannot be everywhere, and I can't, just because I may have an interest in this,
Mhm.
is it the right timing? Okay, Holy Spirit, tap into me. Do I, because there's many things for me that pique an interest, because outside of the disc, Strength Finders is
Mhm.
one of my other favorite tools. And I forgot, what is the one? Oh, I think it's Learner
Mhm.
is in one of my top fives,
Mhm.
top five. Oh, I love to learn. But does it mean that I have to actually take this on at this particular moment?
Mhm.
So there was like a podcasting, some sort of a class thing that this company was doing. I was like, oh, this is great. Oh, I should
Right.
do it. Not, you know what I'm saying? Like you gotta get a level of understanding of like, what do I have going on?
Yeah.
Does it make sense? Right. And then asking, all right, is this really Holy Spirit? Is this really the right person I should be partnering with? Conference I should be going to? Collaboration? Is this really the right room that I should be in? So I think, I'm all about getting in the room and getting where you need to be, because
Mhm.
I do believe the power of the proximity, but I
Mhm.
do believe in the right timing of it, because if the character piece, and again, this is something that I'm learning and continuing to learn right now, is that I don't want my character not to be in the right place
Mhm.
if I have an opportunity that's presented, because I'll
Mhm.
just be in shambles. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? I'll definitely fumble the play if my motives are not right, if my character is not right. So
Yeah.
I think the back to your question about, how is it that I, decipher, right? Like where and when and who and how. For me, it's just relying on God, relying on the Holy Spirit to really reveal and to show, all right, this is, and again, the more that I'm in my word, the more that I'm in prayer, the confirmation will come. I'll get the thing. All right, this is good.
Mhm.
I'll go and like, all right, this is the right direction, or no, no, this is not. This isn't the direction I need to go in, and that's okay too. And I think there's also this aspect of FOMO is again another thread of tangent, but I want to bring it back.
Mhm.
Is it's not about the fear of missing out, right? Because I think that's a lot of the pressure to either do something or be somewhere or wherever the case is. But it's
Mhm.
an aspect of understanding your season and what you're called to and what
Mhm.
does that is going to require of you. And it just may not be that the alignment may not just be there. So don't fear this aspect of missing out, but just if it's going to if something needs to repeat or happen again, it'll come, but it'll come
Yeah.
even better.
Mhm.
It'll come even better the second time around. So
Right.
I would just want people to understand that don't feel as if because I haven't gotten to this or I need to do this, like it's all to shambles. It's not all to shambles.
Right.
It's the season, it's the timing, and it's also just recognizing, knowing it's for you. Yeah.
Gotcha. I hope you're not pressed for time.
Oh, okay. Let's
Gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was
Come
gonna say
on.
I'm not trying to rush you, but
Okay.
what's 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 something that you've seen be effective and either self-sustaining or just have some type of longevity from the time that you got into college or to present day
Yeah. The long the what have I seen? What have I seen? Um
that you
I
like?
probably would that yeah, I would say a couple things I think that has sustained me. I said two things. One, I would say that faith has always sustained me.
Mhm.
I would say that's probably where I was college, you know, and up until now it's only like you kind of have like that like zzz, that line that's like very and then it goes up, right, and
Yeah.
there's a spike. That was probably it. And I think that knowing that God has never failed me, he's never failed me then, he's never failed me now, has always been encouraging, has always really just blown my mind. And then two, I think for me too, again, going back to the structures, the systems, and the behaviors, I
Mhm.
think being able to understand who I am and how I've been created,
Mhm.
you know, hey, I require structure in order for me to actually be able to have the freedom to create or the freedom to be able to do what's necessary. I think that in recent months, yeah, probably in recent months, I think I've pivoted to how can I make quicker decisions?
Mhm.
How can I be comfortable with what people in the product space have said, which is like build in public or like build a minimum viable prototype?
Mhm.
How do you do that and do it in a way where you don't feel like you have to have things, it has to be this way, and it has to be the right color, and it has to be the right idea. You
Mhm.
know, it just means that for me, I consider that a level of growth and vulnerability to be able to say, you know what, let me just go ahead and do this, plan this out, take a few days, take a week, put
Mhm.
a timeline on it, and say, let me come up with, for instance, I had something in June. It was called the PM Weekly Sync. It was for all project leaders across industries. And I
Mhm.
would teach on leadership strategy and execution. And, I was like, okay, I'm going to launch it. Okay, I'm going to really do it. And it's going to be a bit rogue and rough.
Mhm.
I wasn't going to have a whole bunch of like funnels or anything like that. I was like, I have Superphone. Shout out to Superphone, my text message community. I have this thing called a Luma app, which is it's like a free event
Mhm.
planning thing, and I really love the platform. I said, let me just promote it,
Mhm.
do some videos, blah blah blah. And so I got maybe like maybe 1 to 3 to 4 people per week. Wasn't
Mhm.
necessarily floods of people, and I was like, oh, what do I do now? But then I thought to myself, well, why don't you switch? Think about it and switch to maybe like a monthly. So again, as I started to document my process,
Mhm.
And I started saying, okay, phase one, this was phase one. This is what you learned here. Phase two, you're going to go to a monthly and you're going to change some things about it. I was like, so I could have been easily defeated like I was a couple of years ago and had like an event that I was going to do and nobody showed up. So I
Mm.
basically did a whole an hour and a half worth just by myself on a Zoom. I went hard in the paint. You would think that 200 people were in the Zoom room. Nobody was there. And therefore, I had some fear and trepidation about doing anything else. But I
Mm.
had to get over that. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, girlfriend, you got to get over it. Like, that was, no one probably even remembers that you even did something like that.
Right.
So, but I had to say to myself, all right, create this minimum viable prototype, your monthly syncs,
Mm.
and just continue to iterate,
Mm.
execute, plan, iterate. You know what I'm saying? And have that to go until you build up momentum.
Right. Right.
Until you build the momentum. So yeah.
That's pretty cool. I guess we've kind of touched on it, but how did you get into project management? Because that's how I came to know you.
Yes, yeah, no, good question. This is probably something that I've always been doing since I was in grade school. I forgot what was it? Was it sixth grade that
Mm.
I had a huge birthday party? It was laser tag. What was that one company? I can't remember. And that's all they did. They had a laser tag. It was a
Mm.
company. I can't remember. It was a business.
Mm.
Gosh, what was it
Did-
called? I'll look it up later. But
Right. Right.
but basically that's all. It was a company. It was like all the rage. It was
Mm.
like go in and like play laser tag.
Mm.
And so it was maybe it's called Planet Play. I think it is what it was called. But I would go and I would have like my Excel spreadsheet and I would have the list of people to invite and I would have the
Middle school.
location. Yeah. This would, I mean, again, thinking about a project, which
Yeah.
is, in its definition, you're talking about a process. You can talk,
Mm.
it could be a product, it could be an event, it could be a birthday party, it's Thanksgiving dinner,
Right.
and then also too, going in and applying for colleges, same thing. I
Yeah.
didn't have I wasn't really working like that when I was in high school, right?
Mm.
I knew many of my friends, they'd be at Hallmark, they working at the grocery store.
Mm.
And so I was late blooming to be getting out into the working world, so to speak. And so I did not have a job. But my mom, all she told me, she was working a lot, and this is what she told me. She goes, Ashley, I just need, what is your game plan for college?
Mm.
What is it? Where are
Yeah.
you applying? What are the fees? You know, when are the deadlines?
Mm.
What is your process
Right. Right.
for, the what is it, the essays and the applications? So that is exactly what I did. Excel spreadsheet. I would go
Mm.
in, school, date,
Mhm.
the fee. So those were the early stages of the project management pieces of it, and it just built from there, from college, organizing a lot of events. Then it went to, you know, at work. You know
Mm.
what I'm saying? And so that was really my thing. And I remember being a part of a agency.
Mm.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, you're good.
I remember I was a part of a marketing agency,
Mm.
and they had project managers, and I was like, man. And I said, um, interesting, project managers, certifications. I
Mm.
was like, I don't know if could I do that? Because I wasn't really a great like test taker,
Mm.
right? I was scarred by the SATs. And so I was like, could
Me
I
too.
do this? And so I had the opportunity when I went in and worked at a different government agency, and it came, and I just was like, again, plan, process,
Mm.
and it had already been what I've been doing. And
Mm.
so I was like, you know what? Like after studying for it, me and my other coworker, we were just buddies in that, and heads down, studied for 4 months, passed on the first try, and then I just became really marveled by that whole world.
Mm.
And I began to see so many different intricacies of the PM world, and
Yeah.
and all of that.
And
So that was yeah.
gotcha. And was that test your project management professional test, or that's
Yes,
something? Gotcha.
that
Okay.
was the PM. Yes, that was the
Gotcha.
PMP.
So you're the
Yes,
official PMP,
the official PMP. So
not
yeah, and that's
PIMP, but PMP.
yeah, exactly the official PMP.
Gotcha.
And then yeah, and so I just loved it from there. I just really did. Yeah.
Awesome. And I mean, where's that journey taken you? Because this was in college, so I guess that's kind of what informed you on going through government and going through policies and things like that, and like keeping what you had in your childhood and continuing to evolve that, or have you kept the two worlds separate?
No, because I used to think that I think I needed to keep things separate. And I
Mhm.
think, I think this aspect of like keeping like different hats on other corners of the world, it
Mhm.
wasn't working for me. I'm a career professional,
Mhm.
then I, a business owner, right?
Mhm.
Then, I'm involved in my community and things, but I began to really see that the work that I do, and when it comes from the project management perspective, it's just everywhere.
Right.
So, being able to be able to differentiate between, whether it's conferences or just opportunities, then I'm making those distinctions. But you know, there are a lot of even work in policy, there's project management
Mhm.
aspects to that wholeheartedly.
Right.
Actually, being able to ideate and being able to all what you see that's passed on the local, state and federal level, that's a project. There's so many different aspects of it. And I think what's really cool about that is that you can really um create frameworks and really
Right.
begin to be able to crystallize like what exactly is, and how you can go about formalizing the actual deliverable or the process or the
Right.
actual result. Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I think that might have been what I was driving at, because I think that's where we kind of connect, because like from the engineering standpoint, that feels like that's the thing that drives us. And sometimes I don't know if people think we don't care about people because we do so much tinkering. It's like, yeah, we don't want to talk
Yes,
about the fluffy stuff. We don't want to do the admin stuff. We just want to do the work, get the outcome, and continue to do more work to help more people. But I think in that,
that's
it's like,
right.
it's important to both be able to talk to people in the way that people want to be talked to, but also have the actions that meet the outcomes that people want. Because at the end of
That's
the
right.
day, if you have an accident, everybody wants to know what's going on. Like, are they okay? What's going to happen to fix it? Like, can we do something to avoid a future accident and things like that? But like being able to tie those two things together and being like, okay, like this informs me a little bit more about who Ashley Shuler is. Like,
Yeah.
how did you venture into podcasting? And like,
Hmm.
like, because that makes sense how you use all your experience to be able to teach, do webinars, do Zooms, do funnels, everything like that. But like, what led you into podcasting, and kind of like the mini conversation we were having to like you niching
Yeah.
down and being able to follow that track to where you're at now?
Yes. So, you know, being in like a consultant space, there's this aspect of like, all right, how do you get your voice out there? And so
Mm,
in the pandemic, you know, we had to learn about creating your personal brand and like getting yourself out there. So
mm,
I was even really even interested in doing lives at all,
mm,
until we had like Nikki Saunders, from Deeper Than the Brand, and and her encouraging, people to go live, and how she would go live 5 times a day. And then I was like super scared about going live, but I did that like July 2020. That's when I
mm.
started to go live on Sundays, 2 p.m., and just having a lesson, right?
Yeah.
And so, that was cool. That was like building an audience. And then podcasting, that then that just became like a super, a tool that people were using, a
Mhm.
profession, right? That was really getting an upsurge. And so I was like, podcasting, maybe, what would I talk about?
Mhm.
And I just decided, man, I think this would be a really good opportunity for people to hear my perspective on
Mhm.
a consistent basis. And so I didn't realize the how I guess maybe you'll probably agree with this,
Mhm.
how unregulated podcasting is. You could do so much with it, and I didn't realize that's what it was. I mean, I you could start it within a day if you wanted to,
Mhm.
and whatnot. But there's so many different places and spaces and adventures in podcasting
Yeah.
that you could really have. And
So
so
professional.
and so it's really a cool place and space to be. And
Mhm.
so I think one of the things that kind of really got me with the podcasting was that I could take my own route.
Mhm.
So in that, I just finally got to a place like after so I have about 6 seasons, let's see, 50 some episodes. And the reason why I do a season format, because I know that podcasting takes dedication, takes time.
Yeah.
And I was having a hard struggle with like doing it every week, but then also my thing was like I also wanted the audio to always sound good, right? And I
Mhm.
have a great audio person that I work with. And then there was a thing about like you need to have a video podcast. And I was like, no, I'm not there yet, because I also it was very important to me that I understood formats of
Mhm.
podcasts and like what made sense for me.
Yeah.
So in the beginning of this year, I even took like a class that talked all about the format of a show and
Mhm.
how to construct it.
Right.
And so that was really, and so um with that, what was really good is that I was able to see and construct my podcast in such a way
Right.
that it made sense.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You need a minute?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, gotcha. If you need a minute, we can take a minute, but
Oh, yeah, you're
I'll
good.
try to wrap it up. But that's pretty cool. And so, like, from being in Breathe You, being in project management, being in government, and then seeing like, okay, we've been talking about this thing, talking about this thing. Okay, podcasting is something I can do. Let me start with the audio. And like you were saying earlier, like trying to niche, like, was it difficult for you to niche down? Because like the more and more I heard about it, I was like, I'm not going to do that. It's like I kind of am, but I'm kind of not. I'm trying to figure out what works for me. And then in doing that, that's where I took the perspective or the information to say, I need to stop just taking in all this information and
Right.
actually like decide for
Implement.
myself what I'm gonna do and
That's it.
work through that. And even like hearing some comments where someone is just like, "Oh, this isn't good," or "This isn't that." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Like it's not for you." Like like
Right.
I'm not trying to be just like cocky, but it's like, no, I finally understand myself and I'm actually getting to know myself. This is a
Right.
getting to know myself process. So it's that
Right.
it doesn't look the way you think it should look and it doesn't behave in the way that you think it should be,
Mm.
whatever that means. But it's like if someone wants this, it's like, hey, go there for that. If you want that, go there for that. If you want that, go there for that. But if you want this, like come here, like come sit down, have a conversation, have a dialogue, put your feet up, cut the grass, whatever you're doing, like enjoy your day. Because it's like, how was that a difficult process for you? Because like you talked about the technical aspects, like being comfortable, like, okay, I got to
Yeah.
record and like hear my voice. And it's like, okay, maybe I don't hear my voice all the time. Like maybe I give it to somebody else that can help me clean it up a little bit or just like do the editing and then put it out, because then that's one less hurdle I've got to get through or one less mental thing I've got to think about and always be like, I've got to, it's like, no, like going back to government policies and things like that. It's like it takes a village, or it all starts with a village. And maybe
That's right.
once it becomes this giant thing, we forget that we're really a village. Like, you might not like your neighbor, but at some point, like, if their house burns down or if your house is burning down, you want somebody to be like, hey, like, I'm going to come help you put out the fire. I've got a fire extinguisher. Maybe I got some water. Like, you don't want to just not have any kind of relationship. You want to know people.
Yeah, I would say for me is that I went through with like there was a creative side of a lot of different themes that either I was hearing
Mhm.
and trends and things, and then there was like different ways I wanted to do the podcast. And so again, I had this idea of like it has to be something where it's like Netflix limited series.
Mm.
People are able to digest. They are also able to come back to
Yeah.
certain episodes. And I wanted things to be actionable, for people
Mm.
to get from. So I spent the first season talking about system related things. And then I went and like, I think there was like, it was just me. And then
Mhm.
the second one was interviewing people and systems, life and business.
Mhm.
And then I think there was like the third one was season was about all project management.
Mm.
And then the fourth season was all about the system behind purpose, how
Mhm.
people found purpose in this pandemic sort of season. So that was pretty
Mm.
cool. And then the fifth one was all about the power of team.
Mm.
And so what I did was that there was a notion or idea of like, I need a team, I have a team, I have a team, and I would never see anybody's team. So I
Right.
was like, let me go and interview the person and their team.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you, I got a lot of positive responses from people who are like, "You want to interview me and my team? I'd love to have my team member on."
Yeah.
Like, and that was like a huge thing. And so I planned a lot of my season. It takes a minute for me to plan because I got to sit down or I'm organizing it within ClickUp. I got my little templates and whatnot, and then
Mm.
I just have to like really go through and like, all right, well, what do I want to say? And like, what are the interview questions? And, so there's a lot of, again, research and prep and
Mm.
everything that goes into it.
Right.
And I really, and I think for me, the biggest thing was like, again, I wanted the experience and the sound to be
Mhm.
really, really clear. So I was like, all right, I got music made, intro, outro. I just need someone to clean it up so that
Mhm.
it's really, really just crisp, right?
Mm.
And so I think for me, the biggest thing, even for like the power of team, you know, I also have a thing about like who I invite.
Mhm.
I have to make a list. I have to think about it. I pray on it. I
Mhm.
kind of like think and I think through, well, why would I want this person on? What is it that I'm thinking? And then I also do personalized invitations.
Mm.
So I'll do personalized invitations because I want people to hear the heart of what I'm doing. And it's not a this again, this goes back to an early point about the collaboration piece.
Yeah.
It's like it's not a thing where it's just I'm trying to do something because it's trendy. I just want it to fit well of
Yeah.
what I'm doing. And some people, and 9 times out of 10, I mean, many people accept it. Maybe one or two didn't just because of scheduling
Mhm.
and they just didn't have capacity. But I would do the invitation, I would send it out. And then some of that, the follow up, the back and forth, you're just trying to get people's that's kind of, you know the deal. Just probably just figuring out how people can get on. But other than that, like, the last season, my communication season that's up right now, um, it was really a great opportunity for me to really look at it from the perspective of like, all right, well, how do we dissect communication from a team perspective,
Mm.
from a leadership perspective, from even like the tools that we use and the clients that we communicate with. I feel like it was a huge theme. And so I wanted to really break it down
Yeah.
in such a way where, again, it's an aspect where people can really go through like, I'm going to go through like the first 3 episodes, or like, I'm going to go through async communication because that's something I haven't heard about, and then Ashley's giving tangible steps. Now,
mm,
here's an interesting aspect about feedback, right? When you're saying like it's not for you and all that. I was
mm,
in a podcast huddle and people are listening to episodes. Somebody brought to my attention that live stream Ashley Shuler, because
mm,
I have one on Mondays on my YouTube channel,
mm.
and the podcasts are different. There's
Right.
different energy levels.
Mm,
So I thought that was such really good feedback, because someone else was like, yeah, I picked up on that, because they were like, I enjoy seeing you in your face in
mm.
terms of like the lessons and the things, animated, funny,
Yeah.
like able to break down the information. And then I feel as if even the audio piece is, it's still good content, but that it may feel, oh, maybe a little bit lecture style.
Mm. Right.
So I thought that was cool to see, because I thought to myself, when you do the next season, I'm in the planning season right now, or I'm starting that. Okay, well, how do I make sure that the experience from video to audio matches, or
Mm.
maybe it doesn't, or maybe I just need to change up the format, which I have
Mm.
a pretty good outline of kind of how I want to do the format of the new podcast,
Mm.
how I can kind of change it up. But and again, that's where, when I'm saying it's unregulated,
Yeah.
right? And I had to take the whole pressure off of like, oh, it has to be this way, and
Right. Right.
no, it's still me finding out what is the best format
Yeah.
that is going to make sense. Because to me, it's always my last season, and then this upcoming one is really going to be focused on, have I really nailed it with the content, and how it's going to be able to, again, materialize for someone to actually take action on. That's
Right.
going to have to be, and I have to figure out a way, like how do I measure that, right?
Right.
And how does that kind of go? But I am excited about it. I love the world of podcasting, and I love to hear from people like yourself, and others that have the journey. So I love to meet with like people who do. I was at a podcast meetup maybe like 2 months ago,
Mm.
and I met with like someone who does audio engineering, and like, in that whole world, it's like tucked away in a cave, I guess. Like, you
Right.
just
Right.
don't know about these things, like of like what people do, and it's like fascinating. So
Yeah.
I just encourage anyone. And someone made this comment. Someone said, I've never met someone who has very targeted areas of why they're learning what they're learning. And I said, that's a really cool observation, because going back to the earlier point of like, how do you know like what's for you and what's not for you, is
Yeah.
that I'm very selective about what I'm going to dive into for a particular season. And that's
Right.
not by calendar, or, by calendar. So things that are going to speak to me for the podcasting piece, oh yeah, I'm gonna find the time for that. Things that are gonna that pertain to the project, product, and agile space,
Mhm.
you know that's what I'm going to do. And so I had to release myself from the pressure of like, oh, you have to learn it in this amount of time, and you gotta, no, it's like, I'm not a product manager, maybe yet, maybe I will be, but
Mhm.
I'm also going to connect with those people and ask them questions.
Right.
And
Right.
I think that's a great pro tip for anyone that's listening, about where is it that you want to grow, identifying those areas, and then not doing too many, but because again, you have to get your own capacity for how you want to learn, and how you want to grow. But LinkedIn is such a great place. I'm always in a DM, sending a voice memo to somebody,
Mm.
just really learning about their background and their journey. And then also asking those critical questions of like, hey, here's a book to read. Like, and I just, one is out for delivery now. And I was
Mm.
like, okay, this is great. This is going to give me a really good foundation, for me to understand X, Y, and Z. And so, yeah, I would say that's really kind of like my full podcasting journey thus far.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited about it. And I'll soon, and very soon, once I start getting some of the pieces together, I'll start promoting online
Mhm.
this aspect of like my whole sort of blowing up my podcast in open,
Mhm.
because I will be it'll be new format, there'll be a new title for it, and then I also want people, I have a Miro board,
Mhm.
Miro, and it'll be an opportunity for people to provide feedback on that, because again, this aspect of some experimentation of like product and things, what does it
Mhm.
look like to build some of this aspect in public? So I really want people to journey with
Right.
me on what it means to rebuild this podcast. And it's really, there's no timetable for like, oh, by December it'll all be finished. No, there'll probably be a new season by then, and then there'll be an opportunity for people to provide even more feedback on there. And I just want people to be along for the ride.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. It's like you'll know it when you see it.
Yeah, you'll know it when you see it. That's exactly it.
Awesome. And with that, mhm, I'm thinking.
Okay. No.
No, you're good. I, one thing that you said that stood out to me is the importance of niching down. Maybe it didn't apply or I didn't know how to apply it at the moment, but seeing it when people talk about creating content, but also being able to apply life lessons in different areas of my life, I think is something that I'm learning to appreciate, whether it's like getting a book or getting a source of information,
Oh
using
yes.
something when you need it for the purpose that you need it. And then when you got what you need, you can leave it. You don't have to chase something to the ends of the earth. But then on the flip side, if you are pursuing something to the end of it, it's like that's that's dope. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and I think to your point, one of the things you brought up with change, I think your podcast process explains and expresses to me like how change is important in ultimately delivering something. It's like, okay, you do something, you put it out, you get feedback, you do something, you put it out, you get feedback. And it's like you continue to tweak it because it's like, okay, like if I'm doing something effective enough to where someone can talk to it, even if even if in my case it's like someone just screaming out, it's like, oh, okay, like this caught someone's attention and something motivated them to
Right.
put a few words together. It's like, okay, like maybe it didn't strike the response I needed, but it got their attention. And then it's
Oh
like next
yes.
week or next month or next year, if they're back again, it's like, okay, like something's something's happening. I don't know what it is, but something's happening. And it's like learning how to tweak what works for you. And I really like how you're developing your process, you're enjoying your process. There's parts of it that might be like cringy or like I really don't want to do
Exactly.
that, but it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like this is mine. I own it. I know the time period that I work to. Okay, if I do live, this is what I get. If I do recorded, this is what I get. But like, oh, like Ashley's involved in every part of that. And it's like that's the through line, so to speak. And I think that that's an amazing thing.
No, yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. It's a cool journey. It's definitely a cool journey. So I'm excited about incorporating, like some new things, and like some more tangible call to actions and things like that. So yeah, cool.
Gotcha. And let people know where they can find you. And as things kind of unfold, coming out this year, coming out 2024, like, yeah, let people
Sure.
know how they can find you.
Absolutely. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, Ashley Shuler, AShleyShuler, and also on Instagram at Ashley Shuler _. And then also too, like if you are a project leader, if you're somebody that I'm responsible for bringing forth the planning, the organizing, executing, and you've never really like had exposure to the world of project management, I would encourage you to sign up for my text community. I send out weekly text messages, keeping you all informed, tips and tricks. So you can text hashtag PM Huddle, all one word with the hashtag, 2626 722-5444. And that's how you'll kind of get into the ecosystem as well. I also do one-on-one coaching and sessions with people as well. So you all will be able to tap in that way as well. And you'll probably have the information in the show notes and everything. And so yeah, that's how you can tap in with me. But yes, definitely podcasts underway, planning is underway. And so I'm excited. So
Awesome. And what's the podcast called?
The podcast, right in its current state, is Conversations with Ask Ash, soon to be renamed. But that's what it is. And so there is, you can listen to those episodes on Apple and Spotify. Really good, great information, if I do say so myself, things that you can really learn about, and also really take it and also implement as well. So it's good. So.
Awesome. It's good to know that you listen back to your own advice and you're able to like, okay, it's not bad. I did all
It
right.
is absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome. And landing the plane, bringing it back to where we started. Are you still who you said you were?
Yes, I am. But the thing is that I am ever evolving and growing. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thank you so much, Asher. Thank you all, everyone, for listening. Look forward to next time.
Thank you.